Good evening. My name is Kelly Zaney, Vice President of Education and Exhibitions for Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center. On behalf of our board, staff, and volunteers, it is an honor to welcome you to this evening's Philip L. and Ellen V. Glass Holocaust Commemorative Series program. It's been 80 years since the Holocaust began. Violent anti-Semitism remains a threat, as witnessed at a Texas synagogue this month. The lessons of this history have never been more relevant, and hearing from those who bore witness to the atrocities of the Holocaust and learn from their strength and resilience will be a focus of this evening's program, marking International Holocaust Remembrance Day, designated by the United Nations as January 27th, the anniversary of the Liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. In 2019, I had the unique and wonderful opportunity to preview early cuts of Saul and Ruby's Holocaust Survivor Band and advise on the film and see it before it was released to the public, and also get to know the remarkable producer and director, Todd Lending. I think all of us can agree, for those of you that have seen the film, will probably like me go back after tonight and continue to watch it again and again. This is an outstanding documentary about survival and the joys of living, suffused with humor and boundless energy. I found myself laughing and crying and cheering on Saul and Ruby as they worked to try to get to perform in Poland. True, there is this ever-present backdrop of the atrocities that these men faced and suffered, and the irreplaceable losses of their relatives and pre-war life in Poland. But I'm sure we can also agree that Saul and Ruby's indomitable spirit shined throughout the film. They found meaning in their shared love of music. Todd Lending's feature documentary is an extraordinary and inspirational tribute, even offering in the closing minutes of the film a sobering reminder of the lessons that are still to be learned. I want to thank our community partners, the JCC Chicago Jewish Film Festival. After the conversation between Todd and Saul and Ruby, we are hoping to get to questions from you, our virtual audience at home. We'll try to get to as many as possible. So please be sure to drop those in the Q&A function of your Zoom platform when you get a chance. And don't worry, we'll remind you throughout the program. It is now, without further ado, that I want to introduce you to Todd Lending. Todd is an Academy Award nominated and National Emmy winning producer, director, writer, cinematographer, whose work has been aired nationally on ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, and HBO, has been screened theatrically and awarded at national and international film festivals, and has been televised internationally in Europe and Asia. He is the president and founder of Nomadic Pictures, a documentary film production company right here in Chicago, and executive director of Ethno Pictures, a nonprofit film company that produces and distributes educational films. Todd, I'm going to turn it over to you. I want to thank everyone again for joining us this evening for what I know is going to be an inspiring and meaningful conversation. Todd, I turn it over to you. Thank you.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Todd Lending. I'm the producer director of the film, and I have with me the amazing cast: Saul Dreyer, Ruby Sosnowitz, and his daughter Hannah Sosnowitz. And if you saw the film, you know exactly who these people are. I want to first thank the Holocaust Museum for having this Q&A and for showing the film, and especially doing it on such a special day. And I want to specifically thank Raheem Thompson of the Holocaust Museum, Matthew Sackle, Susan Abrams, of course, the director, and Kelly Zaney. I also want to say that please be patient in terms of when I'm shooting some questions to Ruby. Hannah is going to help out, kind of interpret some of the questions. Ruby has new hearing aids; they're not the best. And Hannah, who lives with Ruby, can you hear me, Saul? Are you good? Okay. Hannah is actually dealing with COVID, so she's in isolation in her house with Ruby. she's in an entirely separate room, and she may have to take a moment to reach out to him and explain the question to interpret it so he can hear it. I also want to apologize for the difficulties with the link that was initially sent out. We sent out a new link that was much more easy to access. It just was a link with a password. That is still available. Because of the problems with that first link, I'm going to leave that link up until sundown on Saturday, the end of Shabbat. The link will be taken down. But so from now until sundown at the end of Shabbat on Saturday, you will still have access to the film in case you were not able to see it, and we are very sorry about the complications with that. If you have any other questions, you can always email the Holocaust Museum in regards to that. And so that's that. I want to outline the evening real quickly. I'm going to, we're going to spend 30 to 40 minutes moderating a discussion with Saul, Ruby, and Hannah. And then we want to open it up to questions. So yes, start sending your questions. If you have any questions, do go to the chat box and send those in, because Raheem will be monitoring those, collecting those, figuring out which ones we already covered, which ones should be presented, and he will be handling that. So feel free to just start sending those in as soon as you can, because we do. I would really like to spend as much time getting to your questions so that you feel like you're involved in the Zoom, not just an observer, but actually engaging. Okay, so I'm going to jump ahead here. I'm going to first, I just want to briefly explain how in the heck I met these guys and how this film came about. And then once I do that, I'm going to start asking some questions of Saul, Ruby, and Hannah, and we'll go from there. And then we'll get to your questions. So it was, wow, all the way back in 2015, April of 2015, that this whole adventure began. I had just finished a project for PBS. I was looking for my next project, and one of my friends and colleagues saw this short 3-minute piece on the New York Times about Saul and Ruby and showed it to me and said, "Isn't this something?" And I just was like, "Oh my God, I love these guys. I can't believe I missed the boat on this. How did this filmmaker who did this little 3-minute thing find these guys? They're just amazing." And I said to her, I said, "Man, I wish I'd found them before him. It's, he's already, I'm sure, making a film about it." She said, "Well, you don't know that." And I said, "Well, come on, the guy would be nuts not making a film about these two wild, amazing characters, survivors, who have just started this new venture as musicians in their late 80s. Well, Saul was just turning 90. And anyway, she encouraged me to follow up, and I did. I called. I ended up getting a hold of Saul. I was amazed. The guy was not doing a film on these guys. That was a 3-minute piece, and that was it. He was done. But by this time, since it had been on the New York Times site, there were already other production companies approaching them. So I hopped on a plane. It was like the next day or the day after, and flew down there to try and pitch myself to Saul and Ruby and Hannah. And thankfully, they went with me. I'm not sure why, but they did. Maybe it's because I was also ready to roll. Normally we take time, us filmmakers, it takes a long time to raise funds for your projects. It can take a year to raise funds, and this thing was happening right at the moment. So fortunately, I did have some funds put away, development funds, for a project that was a passion project. I knew at some point in my career I was going to find a story where there'd be no time to raise funds, and I wanted that money there and available, and this was it. So threw the money into it. We started filming immediately, and we filmed over the course of 3 years, starting in in April of 2015. The first day of filming, we actually started with Saul's birthday. So we filmed for a few years, and then started editing in 2019, edited for about a year. There was about 250 hours of footage. So that's why it takes so long to edit. And out of that 250 hours, cut that down to 85 minutes. So that is less than 1% of the footage that you've shot that's going to be used in the film, which sounds crazy, but that's pretty normal for these, what we call longitudinal documentaries, these documentaries that follow people over years. So we finished, at the end of 2019, it got its premiere in January of 2020. So 2 years from the day today. And we opened at the Miami Jewish Film Festival. We were the opening night film. We ended up winning the grand jury prize. We were ecstatic. The place was sold out. They got to play in front of the audience, and we did our Q&A there with a live audience. This is just before COVID hit. And we had then one more showing we had a showing in Atlanta. We were the closing night film there. We ended up winning the audience award again. I mean, sold out, live performance with the guys, just an incredible experience. And we were hopping. I mean, we were just ready to roll. We were just so excited. So I cannot tell you how rough this COVID has been. And I of course, I keep in perspective, people have stories that are much more painful and horrible than ours. But it's been, for the film, for the men, they're survivors, they're elderly. I mean, it was my wish, my prayer that they would be able to travel the world with the film. The film has gone to Moscow, it's gone to New Zealand, it's gone to Australia. It's, of course, shown in Krakow and in Warsaw. I mean, it's been all over, but it is what it is. So here we are. We are doing our connection with you virtually. And with no further ado, I want to bring on the guys and the gal. So why don't you guys unmute? You can unmute. Or I don't know if you want to stay muted. I'm going to throw out questions and you can unmute yourself and answer. And I'll start with Saul. Saul, I want to hear from you, and then I want to hear from Ruby about, Saul, tell me about just how this film has impacted you personally, making the film and seeing the film shown in front of audiences.
Well, a funny thing happened.
Saul, it's hard to hear you. Can you come maybe closer to the...
Now it's good?
That's better.
Okay.
And Rahim, if you can turn them up, please.
Just enough. Okay?
Yes.
Okay. If a funny thing happened, every time we were with you watching the film, we got chosen for a concert. So the last 10, 15 minutes, I didn't have the opportunity to see the end. And same probably with Ruby and Hannah. So eventually they showed the film this year, as a matter of fact, 2-3 months back in Poland, and I flew in to see the film. And after the film, I have a little concert there, and it worked out that the concert was right at the film, and it's the first time I saw the film from the beginning to the end, and I was flabbergasted. I mean, it's unbelievable. The people, we were playing it in the Culture Center of Poland. It was full of people, and they gave me a standing ovation, an unbelievable thought. I wish all of us would be there. I would be the most happy man.
Oh, I wish we were all there as well. Is there, Saul, did you feel any difference between how the Polish audience reacts to the film versus a US audience? You've now been in front of both types of audiences. You're the only one actually that's been in front of both live. Was there any difference in the reaction?
It was.
It was different.
Yes.
How?
I'll tell you why. Because we had, first of all, we had some celebrities. We have the Minister of of Israel. We have some other celebrities. We have the man who put together John Daniels. He's very talented, and he brought an audience that was out of this world. I didn't believe myself.
But were there any
fact? As a matter of fact, Justina brought you the hard drive, and I think you got it, or she's gonna send it to you. You're gonna see the whole thing from A to Z.
were there any questions that people were asking in Poland that were maybe different than what they asked at the Q&A in the U.S.?
No. As a matter of fact, everything was the same. Where were we? How we survived? What we did after the war? A simple those questions that everybody asks.
Okay. And Ruby, let me ask you,
Yes.
how was it? What was it like for you to see your story put all together into a film? What was that like for you?
Very. I didn't believe that what I see, and believe me, it's more than I saw. On the pictures, it's okay. It's very nice.
Did it change at all how you see your story? Did it change your memories in any kind of way?
No. It's a lot more to the story. It's a lot more.
Ah.
Yeah.
So do you feel like I actually pulled more of your story out than you had shared? Yeah. Okay. You were tough. You were tough to get that story, get the story out of you.
At the same time, I had problem with my wife too. You know that everything came together. It's was not a good time.
Yeah, yeah.
I was stressed too.
Yeah.
You know.
Hannah, what was it like for you to see your father's story, Saul's story? What was that like for you to see it all in your story, all in one film?
You know, for me, it's so surreal because knowing that I'm a child of a Holocaust survivor, my family never really spoke about it. It was never a discussion. It was never brought up at the kitchen table. So all of a sudden to have a documentary about this part of my life, you know, of my father's life, and then getting on a plane and going to these places that I never ever thought I would ever go. It's historical. It is an unbelievable chapter in my life to experience this and to go with two Holocaust survivors. I would never have gone to any of these countries without my father. But it's just a beautiful film, and it's the most beautiful chapter in my life. Thank you, Todd.
Oh.
I missed Poland when Saul went by himself. I don't know why he went by himself, but I would have been happier if I wouldn't be there.
Well, that's something we could discuss later.
Yeah.
Off camera. How's that? That's a complicated issue, so we won't go into that. But I do want to. Since you brought up Poland, let's stay on Poland. I first of all, I want the audience to know that one of the amazing things about Poland for us was nothing was planned. The audience here needs to know we did not have anything planned in Poland. Once they got the money to go, I mean, the only plan we had was we would go, they would play in the streets, in the parks, and they would go visit the places where they lived and see what memories came back. That was it. And so it was I think a dream for all of us, what unfolded. It was this guy by the name of Johnny Daniels, who, if you've seen the film, you know, he's from Britain and he has these strong relations with Poland. He's a Jewish community organizer, and he, like me, fell in love with this band and wanted to help. And he organized the concert. He organized going into the presidential palace. he was just he was amazing. So we just completely lucked out, and I think we're all grateful for that. But let me ask, so Saul, let me circle back to you. What are your most? I'll go through each one of you. I want to hear, Saul, for you. What was your most powerful memory from that trip, from that specific trip? Because I know you've been to Poland before, but from that trip, what are some of your most powerful memories?
My most powerful memory was walking on the street when I was living with Hannah and Ruby. We walk into my house, and I was living on the second floor. I have to take steps to go up, and I was approaching. I completely froze. I say I can't go up, and I'm not going up. Hannah was forcing me. Ruby said, but I gave it up, and we walked out. Simple as that.
And were you are you saying you were surprised by that reaction because you had been to Poland before? Were you surprised?
That's why I explained to you why. I was there twice before. I was reluctant to show my wife when I was living, so I was dodging it. You understand? But when we went to film, I couldn't hide it anymore. So I came out with it, and I showed it, and eventually we were three of us in the hall, and I froze.
When I went to Poland, I even didn't know where I live. Everything was destroyed. My street was destroyed. I didn't see, I didn't recognize nothing.
What was that like for you, Ruby? I mean, Saul had the fortune of his neighborhood, and many of the places he had been were preserved. Your Warsaw was bombed, completely destroyed, so you couldn't recognize anything. What was that frustrating for you? What was that like?
You see, I'm younger than Saul. I was a child that time, and I couldn't remember. I remember things when everything was. I remember that place where I used to live. That's what I used to remember. But I never went like to the city to Warsaw, or we never traveled that way. We've been always in the house, outside the house, playing around the, the neighborhood. That's all.
Yeah, that I mean, when you did find the place where you thought your house was, were you fairly
But not
certain?
the house, but a building.
The building, the building, the
Yeah,
building.
everything destroyed, complete. Even the name of the street, I didn't. There was no this kind of name.
Yeah. What about you, Hannah? What was that like? What's your most powerful memory from that trip?
I have to say I was very fearful of going. You know, Holocaust survivors going to Poland, because all I thought of Poland was this evilness that these two men endured. My most powerful moment is seeing my father up on the stage in Warsaw, in a place where he was being hunted, people were being killed. And my father's on a stage performing Jewish music with a Star of David on the side of the building with the face of two Jewish people. And nobody was coming to get them. They were free people. And there was an audience that was looking at them with love. To me, that was the most memorable, most beautiful moment
That was nice.
of that trip for me, is to see that he was finally truly free in that country, and loved and honored and respected.
And also, I want to let you know that we are honoring all the righteous people that saved the Jews. And I was sitting with them on the stage with Ruby, Hannah, We were dancing together, were singing together. As a matter of fact, was singing 100 years you should live. And unfortunately, the main guy that we like the best, passed away last year.
Oh,
It was Adal. You remember?
he's in
Yeah.
the film. He's in the film, right?
He
Yes.
passed away.
Yeah.
Let him rest in peace.
Yeah. But the woman the woman who you were speaking to is still alive. She was at your concert.
Yes, she was there. She saw the film a couple months ago. She was in the audience. Yeah.
Okay.
She recognized me. I didn't recognize her.
Oh, okay. I have so many powerful memories from that. I have to say, in terms of the concert, I was really struck by the audience being made up of primarily Gentile Poles. I mean, they were Catholic Poles in that audience. I mean, there must have been like almost 2,000 people in that audience.
More.
Oh, yeah.
More?
They told me 3,700 people when the police in the Bergen regulating the traffic.
Wow. And the way they enjoyed and embraced your music and you guys as a band and as Jews, it just kind of blew. I mean, it left me feeling so hopeful in spite of all the anti-Semitism that we're seeing around the world, that we're seeing in the U.S. Yeah,
it's still anti-Semitism.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
What should I tell you? You
Yeah.
cannot change the world.
If someone saw the television today, I mean the SMM NBC, you would learn a lesson. I saw that my stomach turned around. What I heard.
It said it have to be killed. The Jews should be killed.
Correct.
Yeah, I know.
And that was November, the Independence Day in Poland. I didn't believe to see that and to hear that.
Yeah. Let me jump to another scene in Poland that I thought was profoundly powerful, which was you guys playing on the tracks. And that actually coincides with this day that we're honoring today. I mean, today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, but it also marks the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. And there you were.
And Birkenau.
And Birkenau, thank you. And there you were on the tracks playing. Again, totally unplanned, completely spontaneous. Let me start with you, Saul. What was that like for you to play on those tracks?
You starting with me?
Yes, I am.
I tell you, it was something to see. You know why? Because when I played with Ruby and turned my head, I look on a kettle car that I was in it, traveling for 2 years without food, without nothing, without water. We were traveling from Krakow till Mauthausen. And I turned around and gave me the pleasure to play against this particular railroad wagon, where they carried 90 Jews, everyone. And when we arrived to Mauthausen, every cattle car had dead people dying from everything. So this was unbelievable that I could stay so many years later and play and turn my head and looking at this cattle car.
I would never went to Poland if that wouldn't happen with the Holocaust, because I remember very bad things from Poland.
What was it like for you, Ruby, to play on those tracks?
What?
What was it like for you to play on those tracks leading into Auschwitz?
I didn't believe that I'm there because I was a child that time. I remember bad things. And this was very unbelievable. So many people came to see us.
What about you, Hannah?
You know, that day on the tracks when we got there And when my father and Saul went onto the tracks and started playing their beautiful music, you know, in honor of all that perished, I kept thinking and hearing people whispering in my ear. And I kept turning around because I felt like somebody was behind me, alongside me, and like whispering in my ear was almost like this kind of energy that was in that area. And there's so many spirits and things of the people who are still there. And the energy that is still there of people, their souls, I felt it. I felt it, I heard it, and it just made me so sad, but yet so proud that we came back, not only Holocaust survivors, but Holocaust survivors that brought their children. Hitler didn't want the survivors, let alone for them to have children. And here we were there and playing beautiful Jewish music that I'm sure most of these people knew and loved. And it was just a joyous, miraculous thing to have been in this kind of place. And this was a very iconic day, not only for us, but it was the first time the Pope was actually there. We had to get there like 5 o'clock in the morning
Right.
to do what we were doing. And then we had to leave because the Pope was coming.
Yes.
So it was just so much that was going on, and such, for me, a beautiful, beautiful moment that I'll always remember.
Yeah.
And,
I would never
and
believe that I would ever go there, let alone
Yeah.
be filming and be on the tracks with 2 Holocaust survivors playing from their heart.
Yeah.
let hope shouldn't happen again, never again,
Yeah.
because history looks like repeat. But let's hope for the best.
I have to tell you, I mean, filming it, it felt absolutely surreal to me.
When
Hold
I
on,
did
Ruby, hold on, Ruby, hold on one sec. Let me just finish. Hold on one sec. It felt surreal. It felt like a dream, and it was just hard to believe that we were standing on the same earth, the same ground that so many people had crossed, so many Jews had crossed in cattle cars and were shipped into the camps like
I
that. And there you guys were playing your music on this sacred ground. It was absolutely sacred ground.
and
Ruby,
I
what do you
believe
want to say?
I believe we all human beings, make no difference who you are, black, white, make no difference. I believe we all should live in peace, because that's what God wants to should happen. We should live in peace, because we're all going the same place when we die. All of them make no difference to you, Jewish or not Jewish, or you black or white. I believe in one thing: if you're a nice person, I like you. If you're not a nice person, I ignore you. That's all. I'm not with politics, Jewish or black, white. For me, make no difference. For me, it's a human being. If
Thank
you're a
you.
human being, a nice person, I like you.
Yes, and you say that we have that in the film as well.
Always I say this too.
Absolutely.
Whenever I see they say you're Jewish, I say, no, I am a human being.
Yeah, thank you. Let me move on to some other questions. One of the things I mentioned earlier is there was 250 hours of footage shot. So obviously a lot of scenes, a lot of wonderful scenes that we got together weren't able to make it into the film. So I wanted to go again around each one of you and say, is there something, let me start with Saul. Saul, is there a scene that you remember that we filmed that did not make it into the film?
There are many of it.
And that you missed?
There are
Many.
I
Give
missed a lot.
me one or two.
Well, I missed one with my son's bar mitzvah.
Mm.
One. I missed another one with my 4 children.
What was with your 4 children?
You were filming Zaki, Paul, and and the cemetery.
Yes,
Yeah,
but they're in the cemetery. We see them in the
yeah,
cemetery.
the boys, but not the girls.
Ah, because they didn't want to be filmed.
Correct. So I miss several. I can't think exactly, but such a wonderful filming that turned my stomach when I couldn't see it. But you did the best. I love it, and I'm gonna live with it, and I'm gonna take it with me. That's how good it is.
I'm glad to hear that. So, what about you, Ruby? Ruby, was there a scene?
Was missing a lot of things, but was very. It's okay.
No. I'm asking: was there a scene that I shot with you in the band, or just you, an interview, or whatever? Something that didn't make it into the film. Is there something that you wish had been in but wasn't in?
I think on the cemetery, when I got my friend from Israel, my wife's brother's sister, and we celebrated in the cemetery. That view I would love should be. That's all.
Yes. So just so the audience knows, there was a scene that was filmed at the cemetery at the funeral for Gina, Ruby's wife, and there was actually a beautiful scene of these. I mean, it's in the film. There's a short scene, but there was more that happened. There was obviously
Was a violin player and
violin player. Doves were released. There was a release of birds, which killed me to not put that in the film. It was a beautiful scene of the birds being released, and I mean, this is what happens when you're making a documentary.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Hannah, what about you?
You did a great job, but I'd have to agree with my dad about the cemetery. And it was not only the doves, but if you've noticed, I had all Holocaust survivors and then their children behind them. And each Holocaust survivor was given a dove. I had 12 doves.
Right.
There was 12 Holocaust survivors and their lineage right behind them. So that was that was just, to me, so powerful and to give all the survivors, including Saul, a dove, and to release to the air for freedom and peace for the world. To me, I would have loved to see that in the film.
Yeah, I agree. It was hard to lose that. I'm gonna say that one of the scenes that all those things bothered me to not have those in the film. I also was upset that I wasn't able to put in the scene of you guys at Treblinka, where you go to Treblinka and you walk towards that monolith, and Saul and Ruby, you guys are walking together. It was such a beautiful scene. And
when we saw the shadow coming from the sky.
Yes.
Yeah, that remind me that God saw that.
Yeah, there was
the minute we light the candle at the monument.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So badly, I said the people are crying on us, on top of us, and after we did that, we hide and everything. The rain stopped and the sun came up. You remember?
It was beautiful.
Unbelievable. This scene was worth it.
Like the Ten Commandments.
We can pay for the scene.
Like the Ten Commandments. It was very.
It was a beautiful scene. It was a beautiful.
I'll never forget that when we were getting protection from those beautiful trees. Oh no, wait, was that in? Yeah, that was in Treblinka.
Yeah.
And the trees were so beautiful. Remember? I mean, and we were underneath there. It was such a bad storm.
Yeah.
And I think somebody turned around and said that these trees were all fertilized by ashes
by the ashes.
of people in the crematoriums.
Yeah,
So the
yeah,
people's, you know, the essence was in those trees that were protecting us from that massive rain.
yeah.
It's
All
a
right,
beautiful
listen,
moment.
listen.
Yes.
We are running. I can't believe how time is running here. We have only about 15 minutes left.
Oh,
So
wow.
let's go to Rahim and get Rahim. Do you have questions? Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. I
Beautiful.
didn't want to interrupt this great discussion you all were having. Well, before we get in, before we transition to the audience Q&A, I just want to thank you all again. I want to thank you, Todd, Hannah, Saul, and Ruby. It's been a joy putting together this program with you all. And I appreciate you all being flexible and adjusting according to what's going on with the COVID and making this a virtual program and making the best of it. So I just wanted to thank you all again. And we're going to transition to the audience Q&A. Please submit your questions. We have a bunch right now, but we're going to get to as many as we can. And we're going to start with the first question. How many?
Amen. Amen. God bless everybody. We should have a peaceful year.
Thank you, Ruby.
That's right.
Rabbi Ruby.
Yeah, we need peace, peace, peace for the world. Enough, enough.
All right, Ruby, let Rahim ask some questions.
All right. How many hours of footage did you go through to make this document, this film? How did you decide what to use? I believe this is for you, Todd.
Oh, yeah. So we were just kind of touching on that actually. As I said earlier, it was 250 hours. And what you do is you put all the scenes together that you feel are strong scenes to begin with. There's some things that you filmed during that time period that you know just probably aren't right. You put those to the side. You start with what you feel are your strongest scenes. You edit those. You assemble all that together, and you look at that, and that can be like a 5-hour cut. You know, that first cut, 6 hours. That's called an assembly. And you go through that, and you look at that, and then you pull out the best scenes out of that chunk, and you just keep working down. And as you work down, then you start thinking about structure and maybe moving this scene in front of that scene, even though this happened a little bit before that. You can put things out of order to a certain degree, and eventually you whittle it down. But it's painful. It's a very painful process. You have to sometimes, as you just heard, there's some scenes that we had to cut that just kill you. Go ahead, Rahim. Next.
All right.
Never again, never again.
Thank you, Rabbi Ruby.
Yeah.
All right, we have a two-part question. The first one is for Saul, the next is for Ruby. All right, Saul, how do you stay so fit and sharp as you age? Your energy is infectious.
I got an answer for that, baby. And when I was 65 years, I had cancer in my stomach. They call it 3/4 of a stomach. Right after that, I had 6 months of chemotherapy, but I gave up on 3 things. I gave up the last 32 years. I gave up on cigarettes, I gave up on whiskey, and I gave up a medication prescribed by doctors. I don't take none, only supplement in my life. Yeah.
You're more than alive. You are like a live wire.
All right.
You got it? You got it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good
Yes,
answer.
sir. All right. The next one is for Ruby. Ruby, it was hard to see your childhood town. It was hard to see your childhood town to be completely destroyed. Do you feel like you were able to get closure after visiting Poland?
You see, I'm not counting my age because during the war was no age. I take this away. I start to count after the war, my age. And the question what you ask, I didn't understood again. Could you repeat it?
Did you feel any closure visiting Poland?
To be in Poland?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't like to go to Poland, but I went because of the documentary.
The question, Ruby, is did you feel sense of peace after going to Poland? Did you, because you had not been there since you were a kid, since the war, did you feel a sense of peace afterwards, or did you still feel
Yeah,
like,
a little
I don't
bit.
want
Yeah,
any?
I felt a little peace. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
All right, Hannah, um, did you go up to the apartment where your dad lived in Poland? And if so, what did you feel?
Well, my father, his home was destroyed. So
He
when we
didn't
find
see it.
when we finally found the block that his home was, there was actually a building that was built. So my father, based on his memory, could remember where the house was, where the yard was, where the dogs were. So standing in that place with my father made me feel really connected to his childhood, if that could make any sense in my mind, because of course it was all, just what he could recall. But I think the person who wrote the question might have confused it maybe with Saul's home.
Well, thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
And Todd, for you next. Did Saul and Ruby at any point during the film not want to discuss their experience during the Holocaust, or were they always willing to talk about it?
Good
Well,
question.
It's a good question. Yeah, it was something I thought about a lot, because these were the first two. First of all, just to answer the question very quickly, the answer is I never encountered resistance from either one of them in terms of memories. And these were the first two Holocaust survivors that I ever talked with so intimately, had been involved with so intimately. My family left Poland before the Holocaust. On my dad's side and on my mom's side, they were German Jews, and they came to Chicago in the late 1800s. So I have distant family that were involved in the Holocaust, that died in the ghetto, in the Warsaw Ghetto, but no one that I grew up with, no one that I knew all that personally. So these were the first two people that I developed actually a personal relationship with. And of course, there's trauma that's involved there, and you do, as a filmmaker, I've dealt with other situations of trauma, people dealing with sexual trauma, with physical abuse trauma, psychological abuse, all kinds of trauma. But I had never dealt specifically with this trauma, and this trauma felt very close to home for me as well. It was an opportunity for me to explore that part of my Jewish identity and history through these two men, and even through Hannah as a survivor as a child of survivors. And so, yeah, this was a really important story for me. But they were always open to answering any question. And Saul's memory is insane. I pray that I have a memory like his at 97, and before that. I mean, what he remembers is nuts. Ruby, it was difficult to get, very difficult to get the details. He spent 4 years in a barn, and he was a kid. He was younger than Saul, as he
Yeah,
mentioned. He was like 10 years old, and so those memories.
7 year old.
You were 7 when you entered the barn? Oh, you were
Yeah,
7. Okay, I thought you were
I
10.
think so.
Okay, whatever. 7, 10.
My mother had 9 children. We
Right.
never know when they were born.
You never know exactly how old
Yeah,
they are.
that's what happened.
But yeah, it was definitely challenging to try and access Ruby's
Yeah.
memory. Go ahead, Raheem.
could
Next.
I interrupt for 1
Oh,
second?
sure, sure.
Absolutely. The floor is yours.
I have 4 children, and I never, with my wife, in front of them, discussed the Holocaust. But what happened when Spielberg started with his Shoah? I was one of the first with my interviewers. So the children were home. At that time, they opened their ears and they heard almost talking directly to a camera about the Holocaust.
And
My
that-
family, all of them Holocaust survivors.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
Thank you for
All of
sharing
them.
that.
All
Thank
of
you,
them
Ed.
passed away.
All right. Next question is for both Saul and Ruby. Uh, what is your favorite song to perform?
Oh, good song.
Oh my.
My favorite song,
Yes.
Never Again. My favorite song there is Once Upon a Time There Was a Tavern where we used to raise a glass or two. Remember how we laughed away the hours and dreamt of all the great things we would do. Those were the days, my friend, we thought they never end. We sing and dance forever and a day. We live the life we choose. We fight and never lose, for we were young and sure to have our way. God bless you, everybody.
Oh man.
I just want to add before Saul jumps in. I just got to add.
You hear that song
Hold
before,
on,
right?
hold on. After talking about his memory, I have to tell people his memory for music is insane.
Music is my. I never forget everything. I could sing and remember the lyrics and everything because I raised with music.
Can I interrupt, please?
Yeah, go Saul.
That's my favorite song in Jerusalem of Gold. Period. Done.
The Jerusalem Gold is after the war happened. I remembered songs before the war.
It's not a competition, Ruby.
Yeah. You know, I was in Israel too. I wasn't served in the army. My first band I created in Israel in 1950.
That was the original Holocaust Survivor Band because they were all Holocaust survivors.
And all of them were Holocaust survivors. That's right. I still have a picture of them.
What else do you have, Raheem? You better jump in here.
Yeah, I know. Well, Ruby just blew
Everything
us
you could
away.
ask me about music. Music made me still alive. Every day, I'm wake up in the morning, I eat breakfast and I play music in the house. Now we cannot play outside. Then music that makes me memories. I have a good feeling for that. Music is my life.
Hannah, what is your favorite song before we switch to another question? What's your favorite song?
You
Oh,
know,
she knows a lot. So
I tell you, I have to say, my father, all the songs that he sings to me are my favorite. Just hearing my father come up with all these beautiful songs. Remember, he, brought the essence of this band, the music, the history of music, the composition of music, the
oh yeah.
programs, as the musical director. And whenever my father would sing all these songs, and then he would sing songs I would never hear before, and we would see people from the audience coming up, crying and saying, I haven't heard that song. My great grandmother sang that to me. They're all my favorite because they come from my father, from his heart. And I'm so lucky to have so many tapes and recordings that I'll always have. I love you, Daddy.
Thank you. I love
So
you
much.
more.
Well, I love this moment. Thank you.
And let's pray for peace. I
This is the
always
moment.
say peace. I dreaming I would like to see in my life that the whole world should open their eyes and say why we are fighting for, why we need another land or whatever. Can we live in peace?
Speaking of that, it takes me
Yeah.
to my last question, and this is for Saul and Ruby. Do you believe that anti-Semitism will ever become less strong?
Well, Now
Anti-Semitism is still around.
Now I'm going to tell you my answer. Could I?
Hope
Yes.
so.
Could I?
Yeah.
Ruby, are you good? Let me open my mouth for 1 minute, please.
What?
Saul, take it. Take it. Saul,
The floor is yours, Saul.
go.
I started the Holocaust Survivor Band with the one item to make sure that there's no anti-Semitism in the world. And I tell you what I did. I opened 2 foundations. One I got approved in Poland, and another one I'm getting approved in America. I'm waiting any minute. The foundation is in work, and the foundation's got several objects. The main object is we're gonna get together all young people with the older people to make sure that anti-Semitism don't exist anymore. Besides this, if you want to know about my foundations, go into soundriot.com. You're going to find out what I am doing till I die. Then you're going to know my answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saul.
Thank you so much. Well, we're going to end the program on that note. And before we go, I would like to thank everyone in attendance for supporting this program, for supporting Saul and Ruby, Todd, Hannah. Thank you all for joining us. This was incredible. You guys' energy is infectious. I enjoyed listening to you all. It was great, and I enjoyed viewing the film, and I'm definitely going to watch it again. If you've seen it, or if you have not seen it, the link to view the film is in the chat along with the password. Please take a moment to watch it again, share it with a friend, do whatever you can to get the message out. Also in the chat is a link to the survey. Please take a moment to fill out the survey. We would appreciate all your feedback. And again, I want to thank everyone involved for supporting this program. Our CEO, Susan Abrams, our VP, Kelly Zaney, our Director of Education, Leah Rugg, our entire education team, Todd's team, Saul and Ruby and Hannah. Thank you all, and I hope everyone have a great night.
Thank you, Raheem. Thank you, everybody.
God bless.
God bless everybody. Thank
And
you.
thank you to the audience, because
Yeah.
without the audience, we wouldn't be here. So
wouldn't be
we thank our fans and the audience, and God bless everybody. Peace for the world. We love you.
Good
Bye.
night.
Peace out.